David.
And I'm Elysia.
And welcome to the Lorehounds coverage of Dune Prophecy on HBO Max.
We're here to break down the Season 1 finale episode 6, The High-Handed Enemy, part 1 of our 2-part finale coverage. Watch out for our feedback episode, where we'll go in a little deeper next week.
Stick around until the end of the podcast to find out what else we've got going on our network this holiday season, plus how to be part of the finale feedback episode. Elysia, both you and I are traveling for the holidays. I'm out in the Pacific Northwest at my mom's condo right now. You, I think, are on the East Coast somewhere. We've all shifted time zones.
Philly, yeah.
Yeah. How was your travel? Everything go okay?
Oh, it's so crowded. It's been so cold, but it's lovely. It just snowed this morning. So
Oh, nice. We got rain, Pacific Northwest. So it's on track for that. Anyway, we're both out of our normal recording environment. So if, dear listener, if you hear the differences, we're making do with what we got.
Yeah.
And I think for this episode, because we're traveling and we've got holiday plans and all that kind of stuff, we decided that we were going to break up our coverage a little bit just so that we weren't, our families weren't like, what are you doing up there? Get down here for dinner. We would do this quick sort of quasi hot take instant reaction. And then after the holidays, we'll come back. We'll do a little bit deeper dive. We'll get some feedback. We'll mix it in with the feedback as well. So that way we have a little bit more time to reflect and take in the community comments. And then after that, we're going to do another crossover podcast with the Dune Minute guys and talk, really get really weird into the lore and the history and dive deep, for all of those folks who are into that kind of stuff. We still have the show guide, and Nancy is still helping coordinating the feedback. Nancy, thank you so much. You are a hero of the Imperium. So we really appreciate it. She's like the third member of our podcast. So. And it seems like we have some news, Elysia, on a future season.
Yeah, it seems like season 2's been greenlit. How are we feeling about this?
I was on Blue Sky talking with some of the Siege posters out there, and I was wondering, would we have approached this show a little differently if we had known earlier that there was going to be a season 2, because I found myself adjusting and giving the show a little bit more room and a little bit, I was really skeptical. There's there's a lot of story threads here. There's a lot of density going on. How are they going to wrap this up in 6 episodes? And if I had known, go ahead.
I was going to say that's probably why they said that before the finale. And the finale is by far the highest rated episode, maybe because of that. But for me, it doesn't fix the problems that I have with it at all. The problems I have with it are in the writing. It's just, fundamentally a mess. Sorry.
And it's an interesting dilemma for us because we're so close to the source materials, and then we know what they're giving us on screen. There's a difference there, and how do we?
But that's also not my problem, for the record. That's also not my problem. Yeah. It's just basic writing.
Right.
Yeah, but we'll talk about this, and we're putting on smiles and keeping it positive because there's stuff we liked too, obviously.
So I think with the season 2 news, though, I can't help but think that that's good for the viewership. What was it? Was it Dark? No, not Dark. It was the showrunners of Dark. They had it was that Titanic-esque.
1899. Yeah. There was a whole extra thing that happened there.
Right. But even so, just from a casual standpoint, canceling a show before it even is done, you're like, well, why am I going to invest the time in watching this? So I think it was smart that they greenlit before the season finale came out. So because then it's I'm like, oh, okay, well, COVID, writer strike, this show has had some troubled production.
Right.
And now I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be as, at least on the plot threads and the different mechanics. I'm like, oh, okay, well, they'll be able to wrap this up in the future. And sometimes it takes a show 2 or 3 seasons to find its footing, right? The actors, the writers.
It's the writers. I'm sorry. It's all the writers and the showrunner.
Yeah. But
the actors are great.
Yeah, and the production has been great. So, but yeah, we know that this is a troubled had a tough go. So let's, I'm hopeful. That's, I guess, where I'm saying is I'm hopeful for the future.
Yeah. I mean, I do hope. They did say, that thing that we talked about before where like they're in the writer's room and they have the books. But again, my problem is not about the books. It's about, so for example, this showrunner is last known for Alison Shapker. She is known for Altered Carbon Season 2, which is when I stopped watching after the first episode. Westworld Season 4, which is also, I don't know. And when I see her interviews about the stuff, I don't feel like she gets it. Like, I don't know, something rubbed me the wrong way. Maybe I was just being petty. When she's like, yeah, and Valia's voicing people. I'm like, no, we don't use that word. It's not how we verbize.
It's not a verb.
Yeah.
Using the way, yeah, right, exactly. Okay. So, well, yeah, and I feel like for me, at least, I'm a little bit in a twilight zone of the book, the source books, and the original Herbert books versus what they're trying to put on screen. And so, yeah, giving it some latitude and being a little bit hopeful because, yeah, visually this show is great. Acting wise, it's lovely. So,
yeah.
And I people seem to be enjoying it. I mean, there seems to be quite a lot of chatter on our Discord, and I haven't been able to read because we've been traveling and doing a lot of family stuff, and so I haven't been able to catch up with everything. But it seemed like there were some chunky posts. People had thoughts and opinions, and so that's always good, right? That's always good that there's a reaction.
Yeah, I did read them, and they're online, in line for the most part with what we are both feeling. But I think a lot of people are saying, and I have to agree with them. At the end of the day, Dune is Dune. It's like I'll eat bad pizza because I love pizza.
And when we complain about stuff, it's because we care about stuff, right? So there's that. We have to. We're not being. If we're critical or negative, it's not for the sake of being critical or negative. It's for the sake of the fact that we care about the material and we want to see a success. So
yeah. And also, then people can't call me a shill. I have to take down one show. No, I was just kidding.
Well, anyway, the internet's going to internet. So what did you think about the finale itself?
Well, first of all, let's point out that it was the length of a feature film. So that was like, yeah. And it's like and that should have been an exciting thing. But I think that it was a mistake for them to hold off so much to the finale. I think, because I was thinking about shows that have really captivated me from the jump. Like, for instance, this is a throwback, but I was thinking about Vampire Diaries and how that caught me in the first season is they would resolve one mystery and immediately set up the next one. And or like Silos tends to be good at that as well. And this is something that keeps people more engaged. Whereas here it's just like we're waiting for too many pennies to drop at the same time and starting to lose the plot.
Right. And that gets into that mystery box territory where we know with from our our experience with Lost, if the mysteries go on and on and on, we get a little bit exhausted from an entertainment standpoint. It can be a little bit trying. And you're holding all these plot threads and you're like, okay, which one is going to resolve? Which one was that? And I can't remember. And agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was to put a double episode and call. I mean, I get from a timing standpoint with December holidays and, all the things like, do we go another week and get into the New Year stuff, or do they wrap it up in a double? So that's kind of a weird. I don't know how that decision was led because of scheduling and to pack it. So because we always knew it was 6 episodes, they never said it was going to be anything but, right?
Well, I do have the feeling that at some point, I mean, since they finally announced when it was coming out a few months ago, they've said that, but I do have a feeling that there was more at one point because I feel like they chopped things out, and that's part of the problem with why. And so this is what I hope for with the second season is it's not just that that it's, it should be 6 episodes should be enough to tell some piece of a story. You just have to decide how much of a piece fits into 6 episodes. But when you have, and this was something similar like what happened with House of the Dragon season 2, if you have already planned out a story for 10 episodes in that case, or, for whatever they might have been thinking here, and then suddenly you have to chop things out, then it starts to feel like unfinished or oddly paced, rushed in some places. And like there's things missing. Like is Jenna suddenly obsessed with calling Lila doe eyes all the time?
Yeah, exactly. It's like you've adjusted the recipe before. Yeah, I'm trying to think of an analogy of cooking or something, but it feels, you can feel that something artificially was done as opposed to the natural pace and flow of the storyline that they had originally conceived.
Right.
And you can feel those structural changes. Yeah. It's a strange one. But anyway, maybe we should actually start to talk about the episode. Right. So I think from here forward.
Just one more thing. I didn't finish my hot takes. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
For one more thing is just I did want to compliment again the visual side of things. So one thing that a lot of people were calling out in the Discord, and it was also something I immediately put in my own notes, is it was so cool. We finally saw at the end the image of space folding, like basically a wormhole opening, so that one of the ships could emerge into space, and from.
That's new lore, right? That's new visual lore for us for Dune.
Right. Yeah. But it fits with the book lore about the fact folding space basically means that you're creating wormholes to get to between places faster. So they really did a cool job visualizing that. The ships always look good. Although I noticed, I said it looks like a really cool vape pen.
That's funny. I actually watched Interstellar on the airplane. That was my one movie as we were flying out here. And so I was like, oh yeah, wormholes. There you go. So shout out to our friend Aisha over at Every Single Sci-Fi Film Ever. She just did a podcast about Interstellar, which is one of your favorite movies, or it's a strong movie for you.
It's scientifically a strong movie.
Right,
writing,
that's what it is.
Not a strong movie.
I noticed how much exposition. Yeah, I noticed how much exposition there is in that movie. But anyway, that's a different podcast. So, you ready to talk about the episode now?
Yeah.
And we'll give a little bit of spoiler warning. Yeah, we're going to talk about everything up through episode 6. And again, to clarify, book lore or lore in general versus plot. And I think we've been talking about the extended Dune universe stuff relative to the show and doing some minor, some comparisons there. And then talking about book 1 of the original series and then the 2 Villeneuve Dune 1 and Dune 2 movies, just sort of as all fair game. And we don't want to spoil anybody's enjoyment, but that we also need to be able to talk about the show with some relative cogence, right? So do you want to lead us through the outline? You put that together for us, so thanks for
doing sure.
That.
So there is one piece of that machine that you see at the end. We'll talk about that, I guess, after the closing credits. That's only the only piece of extra book lore that I added.
Right. That's a good call. Yeah, we'll do some deeper
just a brief talk.
Yeah, full spoilers for sure. Sounds good. Okay, great.
All right. So season 1, episode 6, titled The High-Handed Enemy, which I thought was the weakest title of the series, but that's fine. This did get the highest rating on IMDb of the season. So it's 8.4 it got for this episode. Nice. Episode 3 was the lowest rated, by the way, with a 7.4. So that's actually still pretty solid for IMDb. The writers were Elizabeth Patten and Susan Roble. And Patten, so her previous work includes Umbrella Academy seasons 3 and 4, and Altered Carbon season 2. Roble worked on Westworld seasons 3 and 4. So it's like, okay, you can see this is a cadre that works together. But yeah. And this one was directed by Anna Forster.
I was looking forward to Altered Carbon season 2 as well, and then I was like, "Oh, what's going on here?" But anyway, different.
Did you finish it?
No, I dropped out.
No, I dropped out after an episode. Yeah,
I enjoyed season 1 in kind of a bubblegum sort of pop, sci-fi way. It was good. So,
me too. All right, so Yeah, so first section, secrets above all. So we get a replay of
can I interject really quick too, just to set everybody's expectations? You set up kind of a thematic structure as opposed to a scene by scene structure, just for so that we're not here for 2.5 hours. And our families are going, where are you?
Right. So we're going to talk about the whole arc now with what we find out about the sisterhood. Except, we'll talk about the machine stuff later. But
right. Okay.
So we flash back to when Valia voiced, no, I can't do it, used the voice on Dorothea to command her to stab herself in the throat. Right. And we find out that Valia's whole, her club, all right, so we should point them out. It's Tula, her sister. And we have Francesca, who becomes the mistress of the emperor, and Kasia, who was his truthsayer until she died in the first episode. So they were all there watching, and they saw Dorothea die, and they come running afterwards. And then Valia's like, oh, but we all know, like, we have to tell the truth. But they agree. They're going to tell a version of the truth that doesn't include the fact that Valia forced Dorothea to kill herself, and Valia's like, sisterhood above all. But do you get the sense that she's saying that it's about protecting herself in this moment? It's about her getting away with it. It's obviously not considering Dorothea as a sister or these other sisters she's forcing to lie.
Yeah, and it goes into that central tension that we've been running with the whole season, which is Valia out for herself, or is Valia really given herself to the sisterhood and the mission of the sisterhood, or is she bending the sisterhood to her own goals and motivations? And I think that's clearly at play here with how she's, she made a pretty vicious decision in the moment, and you've now got evidence of some criminality. I'm using sort of scare quotes around that, but that she did something bad and they have to cover it up. And then again, it goes into that whole truth versus lies that we're dealing with in this whole season, with truthsayers and truth being a commodity. And I think I had this in my notes somewhere that, the best lie is something that is as close to the truth as possible. So, I think they were playing with that as well in there. But then obviously, relative to what we see in the rest of the episode, it gets pretty gruesome there on Wallach 9.
Yeah.
They go extreme.
Yeah. Yeah. But Tula, though, this is where we see that despite the fact that Tula was willing to commit a massacre for her sister, she seems to have some reluctance. She seems reluctant to lie. We find out that she's pregnant, and Valia's like, oh, no problem. When I'm Mother Superior, we can do whatever we want, and you can keep your baby. You don't have to give it away like sisters normally have to. And then she says sisters above all, and I feel like there's the double primary meaning where she's like, us as Harkonnen sisters above all.
Yeah, I like that. Sense? Yeah, I like that. I didn't actually think of it in that way, but I like how you set that up. It is sisters above all, that it's the Harkonnens, not the sisterhood, the proto Bene Gesserit. Yeah, I actually didn't think about that. That's good. Yeah, but then as we see, that doesn't work out very well either.
Yeah. Well, because now she finds out in this episode that Tula maybe isn't as much her creature as she expected. Right.
Yeah, and then there's a betrayal. Yeah, Tula commits another betrayal. So
because Valia says Tula's child she's like, oh, he has incredible potential. We're going to shape him into what I want him to be, basically. And Tula's like, I don't know if I want this for my son. So she apparently, with the help of Francesca, she finds out that there's an itinerant worker who had a stillborn baby, and they swap the stillborn baby for her own son, who of course is Desmond. And how did he did say in a previous episode, how did he learn that he was a child of a sister?
I don't think. Did they reveal that? He just said that he just stated that fact. I don't think there was any revelation as to how that came about. What was his planet that he was on?
Balut.
Balut, right. And I don't think they gave us much more. And then the only thing is that he has that little piece of cloth, which is, somehow connected. We didn't even get a full resolution of that either, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And
this is
that's
where it feels like stuff, it's been cut out. Yeah.
Well, and I'm glad, again, going back to the good choice by the studio to tell us before the season dropped that there is going to be a season 2, because we'd all be like, what? Because we were all, I was expecting anyway, that, man, they're going to have a truckload of plot points to resolve here, and how are they going to do that? And so it was a smart thing to do, especially with their numbers. I mean, that's good. I'm glad that the show's getting some numbers, and getting some ratings. So anyway, we've already talked about that a bunch. So
yeah. So okay. So then another plot thread throughout this episode is what we learn in this episode is basically a nanovirus, whereas nanos smaller than micro, and these are a real thing. Machines that are so infinitesimally tiny that we can't really see them. There's a couple good books about it that I would recommend. One I can't say because it's a spoiler, but Prey by Michael Crichton. That's one that it's a lot about nanotech. And so there's a lot of fears around nanotech, of course.
Very big topic in the Star Trek, in the Next Generation world as well. So
okay.
Yeah.
And I liked this idea of they're like the viral nightmare, which of course they mean a nightmare spread by virus, but it just made me think of like, this nightmare is so hot on TikTok right now.
Yeah, indeed.
But I like that phrasing though. And we have Sister Nazir back as the Sook Doctor sister.
For a brief moment.
As soon as she's like, I volunteer as tribute, I'm like, oh, she's dead.
Yeah, exactly. And it was interesting. I think I have some questions about the virus, and obviously we know we know that this is going to be this is one of the tracks that they're laying out for the litany against fear, which is a big thing from the original books.
I was really surprised they didn't get there in this episode, but okay. Yeah.
I was too, but again, season 2, right? Leaving some stuff. And I know the guys over on the Dune Minute podcast had flagged that very early on, and I had been paying attention to other things, so I wasn't tracking the development of the litany. But in this episode, it's right there. It's front and center. They're, it's a fear-based thing. It's in your brain. You have to work through it. And it's like, yeah, okay. And I liked some of the visual representation that they showed us for how the virus was operating and how to fight it.
I was confused. Can you explain that? Can you explain what was going on with the boxes and the particle? How did the particles get in the boxes instead of being in her body?
So this is my headcanon, and it could be certainly not correct. I was thinking of it more of a visual representation in some way, some sort of maybe computer animated particulate matter. Like they got a bunch of stuff in there, and then the computer, some sort of computer is displaying that real time. I didn't read it as those are the actual particles, like those are the actual nanoparticles. I could be wrong, but that's the way I was kind of interpreting it.
Okay. No, I mean, I got it that it's like, how do we represent it visually? But I just thought it would be cooler. And maybe it's probably much cheaper to do that version with just particles in the air versus what we saw with Lila's agony, where they actually like kind of showed inside her body. That was really cool. And that's what I expected here. And then we could see like the little, like zoom in on a little nano in there, but maybe that was just too expensive to
right. Yeah. They
VFX wise
a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. I guess that's some of where my open questions are, is how does this thing work? And then later when Valia is able to gain some memory visualizations of what Desmond went through, like how did the virus allow her to do that? I kind of have some questions around there, just in the idea of a virus itself operating in a fear-based thing, like, this center is activating, and then that activates the virus and the nanoparticles and what have you. I can get that. That's an interesting technology, right? That's an interesting way to do this. But yeah, there's still a lot of unclarity. How does Desmond activate it?
Yeah. They said, yeah, he must be the virus's first victim. So it's like he's like the supreme carrier, because then they also say that killing him would stop it, which of course Tula doesn't want. But I guess it would stop it because when we see he does seem to have, it's something that can be triggered, and he seems to be able to trigger it, but we still don't know how that works.
Mm. And he does that breathe out thing when he's with Valia at the end there, I'm assuming that's how he's infecting her. He's putting particles into the air. Yes? No? I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah. How is it so selective, the virus? Like when he implants it at the Lanzarote meeting, he has certain people who are affected by it, but not others. So how does that work?
Yeah. And then when the couple times where we've seen him interacting with victims that have the internal combustion thing happening, there is this whole thing of him touching his temple and his eye and whatnot. So yeah, and we see obviously the eye technology in there. So obviously there's a connection between the virus and how he was altered.
Right.
So, but yeah, we don't, season 2, right? If we even get it.
Right.
I mean, not that we don't get season 2, but that we,
if we
will
get
they keep laying out will they keep playing the mystery out, which I think, like you said, set up a mystery, pay it off, set up a mystery and pay it off. And that feels good and entertaining for us, as opposed to this, you have longer, bigger story arcs, but don't keep stringing us along. It gets a little exhausting. So,
right. Yeah. It's too much to keep track of. And especially for people who are new to the lore.
Indeed.
Or even, those of us who are not new to the lore and are nervously awaiting them telling us it's not magic.
Exactly.
But at least it wasn't magic. At least it was
Exactly. I am sorry to see Nazir go, though.
Yeah, me too. I like the actress. And well, I'm sorry to see a few members of the cast go. Next season's going to be interesting.
Indeed.
But yes, she does give us some good intel before she goes. She says that there were lesions multiplied in Kasha's brain when she died in the first episode, and so she says it happened over the course of days. And and Kasha was basically, because she's a sister, she was able to do her pranabindu and keep herself calmer longer, and that's why she lasted longer than the victims on Seleucia Secundus. But
so, go ahead. I had a question, but go ahead.
It's just I don't remember what I was going to say. Go ahead.
Okay. I was wondering if she would have died on Seleucia Secundus before she left to go back to Wallach 9, but she was using her thing. So what was Desmond's intent then? If he infected her but didn't activate her, will this thing slowly grow on you? And then but then how are the sisters being affected by it? Did Kasha must have spread it on Wallach 9? Right?
Exactly. But then why would it all die if Desmond died? I don't know. I need to apparently not think about this too much. Oh, but I remembered what I was going to say. What I was going to say is over the course of days, this kind of tells us that the jetpacking that's happening is just editing. It's not really that she's going that fast. They're just editing it to look like things are happening at the same time.
So as a lore-oriented person with the books, for myself, I have two criticisms of the show. One is about the voice, but the other is about the jetpacking. Like space travel in this time and in this universe, the way that Herbert set it up, it was expensive and it took a long time. And it wasn't an easy thing to do, but yet here we have, and I get it for the sake of the story, we do need a little jetpackiness, right, to keep the story moving.
I mean, if anyone can afford it, it's the Imperial family and the sisterhood. So
sure, that's a good point. But it is a little jetpack. I will say it's a little bit much.
But I think it is just also, I'm saying that the trips, we should assume the trips are taking longer than we see. They just don't they don't show Kasha sitting on the ship, they just show her walk on, walk off. So it feels like it's happening instantaneously, but then they're like, oh no, there were days in between.
That's a good point. And we don't have any other markers in the script or anything like that say, oh, hey, she left, 6 months ago and whatever.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, so Nazir, the other thing that we learned from her, well, first of all, she's the one who notices that they're nanos, and she says, the monster of Arrakis, eyes, they're watching him. It's not human. So we find out later that, of course, we'll get back to this, but this is the machine we see later pulling Desmond's eye out, because the nightmares are basically all Desmond's visions that are being virally passed on.
I guess that's how it's going. And then Valia was able to trace. She was able to last the longest to see the vision completely play out. Is that?
I guess so. Yeah.
What's the name?
She's super Reverend Mother, super Mother Superior.
Yeah. Well, and she had Tula's help coaching her, right? Because she kept pulling her back, saying, "Hey, don't fight it."
Yeah. Right.
Do the finger trap thing where you have to push in rather than pull out. So.
Right, because the thing is that the Sisterhood want to approach this the same way they do the Rossack poison, where they think, like, if I can transmute it within my body, I can conquer it and become some better being out of it, But because they are machines, or as Nazir puts it, thinking machines on a nanoscale, engineered on a small scale to be triggered, so they can't transmute it.
Right. Oh, okay, that makes sense now. I get it now. Okay. When I was watching it, I didn't have the fact that these are nanobots, so to speak. I didn't have that piece of the puzzle. So then that makes sense. I was only able to watch this once. So in sort of a travel fatigued state,
right.
I had to take a little nap at one point watching it and then come back to it. Our flight was like super delayed and we got in so early. And
was it as crowded for you as it was for me?
Actually not. It was pretty, we flew out of Boston and it was pretty chill. And even though we kept getting delayed, everybody was in a good mood and the crew it was all like, given the fact that there was the delay, everything else was fine. So we just got in very, very late. So I was a little tired the other day. So anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Well, yeah, I think, so Hanukkah starts tomorrow night as well. And so that was the explanation I got for why it was, for me, every seat was booked out, which is fairly rare.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway,
speaking of seats being booked out, they're filling up that jailhouse.
Yes, the Spencer cells are full with 2 people.
Yeah. So we've got this Spencer jailhouse shuffle going on this episode. We've got first Kieran, he's getting Spencer belt torture from Desmond, who's like, I'm going to beat you up, but now you should work for me and avenge your family name. And Kieran's like, no, it can't be Harkonnens involved, because I hate Harkonnens because they killed my whole family. And he's like, yeah, avenge them. I don't know. Any thoughts about that?
No, I just thought that throwing him against the wall didn't seem very imaginative for that. I think they were trying to play with the Spencer technology. What cool things can we do? And it was like, well, let's just throw him against the wall.
Yeah, at least hold him upside down or something. I don't
know. Exactly.
Spencer pinata.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know that I have much to say about that particular aspect. I mean, it was a natural coming together of plot lines and that kind of stuff. So yeah, it seemed pretty straightforward to me.
Yeah. And Inez is trying to free him, and she's arrested by her mother, and her mother says, I wanted to teach you about power, so let this be a lesson. So, okay, what did you think of that?
I was pretty surprised that she made that choice, that Natalia made that choice, given, we had that intimate scene earlier on at the betrothal where she's sort of, there's this lovely little mother-daughter. And here is another critique, I guess, of the plot. We're really intimate with a lot of these characters, and we are supposed to be sort of bonded to them. So as they're going through all these different trials and tribulations and these difficult choices that they have to make, that's should be the emotional payoff for us as viewers, in terms of the entertainment. And I think with the compressed 6-episode schedule, and regardless of the quality of the writing and the particular writers involved in it, I never felt the mother-daughter tension build up enough to have it then broken by her choice to have her arrested.
Right.
And I get it. Intellectually, they put some stuff out there for me to feel that, but then emotionally, it never punched me the way I would have liked to have been punched. That's a weird thing to say, but anyway, you know what I mean? Like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened between mother and daughter, because they just never built their relationship beyond that one moment, really. And so
Right.
I get that Natalia is a power center of her own because she brought a good chunk of the Imperium into this alliance,
Mm-hmm.
and that she sees her daughter as this future ruler, and so she wants to groom her and prepare her to be successful. But then, she gets obviously all the things that go on, and then when she makes that decision, it didn't have that spark I wanted from it.
Yeah.
To make me really feel something for this relationship.
The last real interaction we saw between, that first interaction where she's prepping her for her wedding, and it seemed like there's so much warmth. Yeah, that reminded me actually. I do really like the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, and there was a nice thing with
Never
little
apologize.
No, I'm not apologizing. People
I know.
who dislike it can apologize to me. But there's this nice, lovely scene between little Leia and her mother.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I realized that this was mirroring that also in like the set decor to a certain extent too. So I realized I carried some warmth over from that as well, from that association.
Right.
But the last real interaction we saw was that dinner where Natalia ended up storming off from the table because because her father was, Haviko was openly flirting with Francesca and all that. And
her brother got the promotion and yeah.
Right. And Inez was the only one who really noticed her mother stalk off, but she didn't follow her. And of course, her mother didn't notice her noticing her. And I wonder if she'd followed her and been like, Mom, are you okay? If that would have changed everything.
Right. If that would have given us one more intimate moment so that when the heel turn came, it would have had a bit more impact. Yeah.
Right. Or if it would have prevented the heel turn. I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, it's a power move. And it all goes into Natalia's play to ultimately, stake more of her ground. Because obviously she's frustrated with his ineptitude and his inability to actually be a strong leader, which then we learn later how much he was set up to not be a strong leader.
Right. Yeah. He's about stability, not strength. Yeah.
Right.
And we've also, Valia, she gets arrested. She wants to get arrested to get close to Inez in the jail. And so this is when Theodosia, the face dancing thing, finally comes back into play. And we find out that Theodosia was an experiment of Tleilaxan geneticists. So how many other experiments like that do you think could be out there?
You would think that she would not be the only one.
Right.
That sort of, that they had a program, a whole scientific experiment, and they would probably be a little upset that their experiment went missing and is no longer. So that's a good motivation for trying to get paid. This is just occurring to me now, like who could be behind Desmond? That's a good motive right there. It's like, oh, the Sisterhood has our experiment. I hate to refer to a human being as an experiment, but anyway, that Theo, that she's been taken by the sisters, so you could see that they would maybe want to, do something against them. So that's a good motivation.
Yeah.
And sorry to add one more thing too. That we know that for Villeneuve's third movie, we know from a lore standpoint, we don't want to talk about it, but that there is some, they're laying, it's conceivable that they're laying some track. They're prepping some material for the third movie without being specific about that material, but that they're leading up to something.
Yeah, maybe. I think the face dancers come in a little later than that in the books, but similar. Basically, what are then by then called the Bene Tleilax or however it's pronounced. They play a role in the third, in the book that the third movie is going to be based on. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, so Valia, she wants to get arrested, and it seems to me like, I don't know, I guess she's just done with Haviko, and so she decides to just be a complete bitch to him, and that's how she's going to be arrested. She's going to say the most petty things possible, belittling, just really cruel. yeah, I don't know. It just seems like she could have played this a completely different way and gotten a much better outcome, but okay. I guess that's
Well,
not
and
how her brain works.
the other thing for me was that it seemed like a massive exposition dump. Right. She was like, it felt very much like a Bond villain, a James Bond villain exposition speech. Like, well, this is how I'm going to take over the world. So you're not going to stop me because I'm going to kill you in the most slow and devious manner possible rather than just exactly. So it just felt like here's a whole lot of lore that we're just going to sort of throw at you. I did kind of in some way, just from a character standpoint, I thought that the drama of Valia saying all this stuff, it was pretty cutting. It felt pretty sharp, I was like,
no, she was being horrible to him. Oh man, I feel really sad for him this episode. Like that was just a really sad ending. But although I have questions, we'll get to that. But
and we learn all along that he was enfeebled. His whole rule is a giant exercise in enfeebling him and keeping him in a very tight little box for control, because obviously their bigger motive was to get Inez, to get a sister on the throne. And so they were trying to maybe set it up so that when she came in, she would be a sort of a hero of the, like, oh, here's this great, wonderful leader, which sort of plays into some of how the original book, and then at least with the movie with Raban and Faid and that whole kind of thing, like, oh yeah, you have this one, good cop, bad cop kind of thing. Like, oh, here's a bad leader, and now here comes this good leader, and we all love him, and everybody's happy, yay! Like, bringing Inez in, and like, hey, we love Inez, she's great. So where Habiko was kind of meh, right?
Yeah. Yep. Well, okay, so to wrap up the face dancing plotline, Theodosia, she ends up swapping places twice. So as a bunch of us predicted, she was originally Inez for like 10 seconds.
Yeah, and there was a lot of people who got some bowls of cereal on their internet points for that.
But then once Inez insists upon taking Kieran with them, but then I don't understand the point in Theo staying after that. And it's like, oh, well, I guess it's to buy them time so that they think Inez is there and don't realize she's escaped. But then actually Inez and Kieran are stopped and have to fight their way out. So that doesn't mean anything, but it doesn't matter because at the same time, Theodosia has randomly decided to actually give up on being Inez and immediately swap into being a dying guard so that she can try to stab Desmond, but that does absolutely nothing. So I'm like, okay.
Yeah, it felt a little wasted. And then, of course, now they have Theodosia in custody, right?
Yeah.
So, that's obviously a season 2 plot point. And I'm wondering how Desmond is able to survive that gut wound, because that is not a good place to be stabbed. No place is good to be stabbed, but that is particularly bad. So
right. So yeah, we're getting a lot of indications he has some superhuman healing something.
Yeah, there's more going on there. And then I was kind of disappointed because one of the things that they've been building up with the Sisterhood is that they're badasses, and their training is superior for a lot of people relative to a lot of people. And so just to like, poke him once, and then like that was the extent of her. Like, I would have loved a little fight scene. That would have been cool, right? Theodosia, Desmond, Matrix style, like, come at me, bro.
Yeah, yeah. We haven't seen Desmond fight at all, have we? For someone who's supposed to be the warrior, the head of the proto Sardaukar, and the proto Sardaukar did not do well this episode either. By the way,
they did not.
They are not ready.
Apparently, they need some more training.
Yeah, they need the planet to be destroyed so that they can live in misery.
That's right.
And become more tougher, because that's what they say in the books. Anyway,
exactly. That's the whole point. That's a big theme, is ecology, how ecology shapes species and organisms. That's something that Frank Herbert was working on very deeply. So
and so Desmond calls Theodosia a monstrosity, and I kind of chuckled to myself. I was like, well, he can't use the word abomination, can he? That's taken.
Yeah, exactly. So.
And Theo left a dispenser car at the palace for the escapees, and they eventually fight their way to it, and that's that. And Theodosia is she's now the only prisoner left in the jailhouse.
Right. So let's take a quick break, and then when we come back, we can pick up. What do we've got next? The Abomination.
We're gonna talk about Aina Rule, the thinking machine, and the Abomination.
Sounds good. We'll be right back. And we're back. All right, so let's pick up with Aina Rule and the Abomination.
Yeah, so we see another flashback where Tula is having doubts about her sister. She was at first reluctant to embrace the whole Aina Rule, is what they call their thinking machine that's helping them do the genetic planning. But she falls in line there, and we see that they actually planned for Haviko and Natalia to get together. And we find out Natalia's last name is Arat. I can't find anything about that. If anyone knows if there's any Arat in the lore, please let us know. But Valia immediately knew who she was, so she must be important. And she was bringing in, these extra planets that weren't yet part of the Imperium. So there's an important alliance, but they needed to send what's her face, Francesca, to keep Haviko busy until they could marry him off to who they wanted. And it strikes me as a little sad for Natalia, because Natalia is like, I brokered my own marriage. And actually we find out that it was all manipulation.
No, you didn't. Yeah. And again, just building up the depth of the sisterhood. And I think, maybe this is an interesting point here is, at least in the original Frank Herbert books and our current on-screen adaptations of that, the sisterhood, the Bene Gesserit, have really retreated into the shadows more, as opposed to being overtly controlling, and they're using the breeding index more.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if this is all part of that storyline of them going, well, maybe we should be less direct, because they're kind of direct right now in some ways. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah, maybe maybe this is the point where they're like, we got to pull back a little bit and maybe take a little bit longer view, rather than being so direct and maybe short-term thinking. But then again, that would be part of what Valia's failures as a leader are in that regard, because she's thinking very short-term and thinking as a Harkonnen rather than as a Bene Gesserit. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and so we get back to Jen and Doe Eyes, and we see Jen has tied down Lila for her own safety and says it's for her own safety, but it will be over soon. So what do they think is going to be over soon? That she'll have finished, conquered her inner ancestors, basically.
Yeah, maybe that's a good speculation. Or if they did the spice, is Lila not affected by the nanovirus because the spice did something to her?
I don't know. Yeah, maybe they'll find out that it seems like they would try, because they found out that the spice, because they thought it was connected to the Omnius Scourge, which it is. But they used in the first iteration of that. And again, this is in the books. None of this has been said in the show or contradicted in the show. So just going to go with book lore when we don't know. But in the books, at least, spice helps to block the Omnius Plague. So you would think that would be an early thing that they would try.
Okay. So it feels like it's embedded there.
Yeah.
But of course, hey, would you please loosen my restraints? And you're like, oh, come on.
Yeah, come on. Like, Jen, what kind of sister are you? You're no truthsayer.
Have you not watched all the television that we've watched? We know that this is coming. And of course, they had foreshadowed the sedative needle thing. And of course, she uses that against her. So
Right. She pickpockets her and stabs her with it. But I mean, it's just like, Jen should be better truth-saying, especially if we're supposed to believe that she and Lila are quite close, which I think, again, there are some cut scenes from that. But then shouldn't she recognize that she's not behaving like herself?
Anyway, exactly.
Because I can see it. But it was kind of badass. Jen dislocates her thumbs to slip out of the restraints and escape.
And they've been building Jen up to be a bit of a badass the whole season. And so it made sense from a character standpoint that she was able to prepare herself for that moment, and then with that quick action. And so that seemed good for Jen's character. I know we've been like, what's Jen's deal all season?
Right.
It's like, okay, well, she's a tough one, and
Right.
and if she's still immune to the nanovirus, then there's something there in terms of plot lines that they can play with going forward in season 2.
Yep. Yeah, and we get a new sector of the faithful, Emmeline, led by Emmeline. We've seen that being set up, and now she's like, we must band together in the faith. And now we have Lila, who we know is possessed basically by Dorothea. So I'm going to call her, I'm going to call her Lila Tea.
Okay, good one, good portman too.
So Lila Tea comes in and she's like, I need to speak. And she name drops these Sister Esther Cano, Avamar, Jessie. And we find out that these are the Butlerian sisters. So these were the zealots basically under Dorothea. And she hears that they disbanded after Dorothea's suicide. Apparently that's what Emmeline heard. And then we find out, Lila Tea goes looking for her, and we find out that Valya, presumably, erased all records of these people in the system. So my question is, how does Emily know about them then?
Yeah. Because she says she's doing research. Yeah, no, that's a little hand-wavy, isn't it? It feels a little hand-wavy. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how to square that circle.
Yeah.
Just that we know that Emmeline is orienting more that way. So what research, what was available to her in terms of the HR records for the sisterhood at that stage? I don't know.
Right.
Yeah. That's a good big question mark. But clearly the mirroring, right, between Dorothea and Emily, and then this cadre with Lila,
right,
Emmeline, Theo, and there was one more, wasn't there? Am I missing somebody?
Wait, Theo wasn't
Jen.
there, right?
No, but they were as
a
little group, and then they were using that group to mirror the Dorothea faction, and then the Valya, and with Francesca and Tula and Kasha, all these little knots of sisters.
Right. Little knots of conspiracy. And speaking of which, we get a flashback where young Valya's gang is trying to unite with Dorothea's crew, but then unite in a Valya kind of way where she's like, all right, you join me or kill yourselves. And she voices at them. No, I can't do it. She uses the voice on them and says, choose. And Avila is the only one who chooses Valya. Tula sheds a tear watching this, and all the rest are dead.
So we finally get some backstory for Avila, right? We've been trying to figure out what her deal is all season. At least they gave her a credible story. I'm glad that there's something behind Avila's character now that, whether you agree with it or not, whatever, it's like, oh, okay, she was there at this moment where, things were pretty ugly. So, yeah. And I could see how that would be playing out with her character later on, like being loyal, but also like, man, this is really messed up. But I promised to be loyal, so I got to deal with it. So that all sort of makes sense. I without being negative, I do have to, as a person who prefers the Frank Herbert original 6 books, they've made a choice on how they're going to deal with the voice. And this breaks canon. This very much breaks canon. It
breaks canon for the Brian Herbert books too. So let's stop pretending, because I'm also hearing on our Friends the Dune Minute podcast a lot of Brian Herbert stuff breaks canon. No, this show breaks canon. This is not canon with any of the books. So whichever books you prefer, this is doing its own thing.
And I haven't read a lot of the Brian Herbert stuff. So I want to be careful about where I speak to. And the voice is something that was developed. It's a psychological tool. It's not a magic tool. And so it was developed over a long, long time. And interestingly enough, there's a quick aside here. There's a lot of conversation around like, why 10,000 years and shouldn't there be more development? And why is this look so? I'm actually working on a blog post right now. I've been doing some thinking and a little bit of light research. Okay. And I have some opinions about why the 10,000 year time frame makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been noodling. I've got an introduction ready to go, and I'm working on my sort of arguments or like, what my opinions are. And I hope to have that up on our website, on our blog section of our website, at least by the time we do the Dune Minute podcast, if not before then. So it just depends on how much time I have for the thing. But I think there is some things that make sense around the 10,000 year time spans. And that's one of the things with the voice is the voice is developed over a very long period of time. And finally, and very, very finely tuned, and there's very specific skill and technique behind it. Where in the show, they've made a choice. It's their choice. It's a little bit more of some sort of naturally occurring phenomena that Valia discovered accidentally. So, okay, I get it. That's a choice, and that's fine. It just breaks canon. So
it gives this feeling like she just reached inside herself in a moment of desperation and found it in that moment, which, it's just a lot of shortcuts being taken here, which again goes back to what I'm saying, that feeling like things are missing. Yeah.
I don't disagree.
So, back in the present, Lila Tea, takes out the grate, and a waterfall starts pouring out of the cliff on Wallach 9, and it clears that eye-shaped pool we've been seeing all season to reveal the bodies of the slain sisters at the bottom. I do have questions, though, about, like, how did she know to look there?
How memories work and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's a good question.
Right.
Because she went right to that machine that would then open it up. And she was like, this place is more than you realize. So I did notice that in the shots, in the time jump shots, that central courtyard looks very different. There isn't a lot of moss growing around. It's cleaner. It seems newer, and then versus the time. So, there's a lot of visual
design
cues.
Is on point.
Woof, man, I'm telling you. And I know you posted a video in the Discord about something the showrunner. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but I think you said that it has some architectural details about how they've designed the show.
So there was, I think this was on the HBO YouTube or something like that.
Right.
And it's, they were talking to the production designers and showrunner, not the showrunner actually, but the production designer. And so they said that Solusa Secundus was at least inspired by Greco-Roman architecture. But of course, a lot of people are pushing back on that, saying like, I don't know that I see it. I think it's more like brutalist Art Deco personally, but I'm not the production, but it looks great.
It does look great.
Yeah. Whatever the inspirations are. I'm sure it's a mishmash of inspirations.
Yeah.
And okay. So then Lila Tea, I can say this. Lila Tea leads the whole sisterhood into apparently the poorly guarded secret Einarule room and destroys the machine.
Yeah. Which, are the databanks safe? Maybe you took out the CPU, but like the records are still there. Like obviously there has to be something that is being recovered. And then if that then crosses over with, mentats, because we know that you can dual class, if you want to use a Dungeons and Dragons analogy, you can take a little bit of mentat along with your little bit of sisterhood, and we know that the sisters do have mentats in their ranks. And so, does that open then the door then for the mentats having to come in and resurrect the breeding index program?
Or does it open the door for a certain AI who the mentats were using, who may be part of what we saw in the flashbacks or in the visions?
Yeah. There was a very quick scene with Harrow Harkin in there. We're like, what is that?
That too.
Yeah, major season 2. Like, hey, here's this giant plot point.
We were just going to drop this 10-second Edward Davis moment for you. Thank you. I'll take it.
Indeed.
So that brings us to what I found the saddest thing, the death of an emperor. And Haviko, he says to Francesca, they have their last, it is poignant to think about, this was their last time together. They were lounging in bed, which my sister just told me is called Herkel-Durkeling. Well, they're not lounging in bed sexily, but just staying in bed.
I've never heard of that term.
Apparently it's, she says it's on social media, but not Blue Sky, because that's where you and I are.
Right. Okay, Herkel Dirkling. I like it.
But yeah, and he says to Francesca, Natalia knows about us. I think she'd be relieved to end the charade. Like, you do not know your wife for a second.
And then we get some more lore building around this idea of imprinting, and that, he can't harm her because of the imprinting. But it seems like she has feelings for him as well, in some degree or fashion. She's not... she's, a lot of times you could think of the imprinter relating to the imprintee as this is a job, an assignment, as they use the words in the show, and that the feelings are not true or deep, for the other person. But it really does feel like Francesca has feelings for him.
I agree. But not for Inez, because she says to Valia, she's like, oh, let's exploit Inez's danger for our benefit. Like, damn. But then when Valia wants Francesca to kill Haviko, then Francesca's like not too keen on it. And Valia says Haviko's reign is over and he can't divorce without risking war. She says, he's the father of my son. And she says, I'm sorry, but you knew this day might come. And she hands her a needle coated in metacyanide to use on him. They don't call it a Gom Jabbar, but that's definitely what it is, right?
Well, Gom Jabbar is not a specific weapon. It's a term of art, if you will. It's the high-handed enemy. But it
is specifically the needle with the metacyanide on it.
Right, but it's it's actually the weapon, the needle itself isn't. In the movie they call it a Gom Jabbar, but
in the books they do too.
Yeah, but
in the original book.
It's actually not specific to a weapon. It's specific. It is the high-handed enemy is anything that if I've got power over you, then I can be. I'm the Gom Jabbar. The Bene Gesserit consider themselves the Gom Jabbar to humanity. They keep humanity on the edge, moving forward in a particular direction. And so the Gom Jabbar.
Where do you get that from? Because I've only ever heard it that I can think of referring to this specific needle with this specific cyanide on it.
I'd have to pull up the.
Okay.
I don't know, but it is the high-handed enemy is not just the weapon. It's
okay.
It's like I've got power over you,
all right.
But in a way that is a deadly.
Okay, I have a different understanding of it, but we can pick that up another time. But from my understanding, it's the needle specifically. But anyway, they don't call it that, but it's the same thing that we see being used on or held against Paul's neck,
right,
in the first book / movie.
So, and that is a very specific visual reference to the Villeneuve choice, the choices that Denis Villeneuve used in Dune Part 1 was the design of that needle, because obviously in the 84 movie we have a different design, which is like a finger cap with a little needle on it. So, which is more like the tranquilizer needle that Lila uses against Jen. Lila Tea uses against Jen, and more of that design. But anyway, that's a visual choice that they have used. And it's also, I believe, on the Mother Superior signet ring is kind of an Ouroboros with a Gom Jabbar needle through the middle of it. If I'm remembering correctly what the design looks like. So
I wonder why they didn't
that visual design.
Yeah, I mean, they called the episode The High-Handed Enemy, but I wonder why they never used the words Gom Jabbar.
They never used the words Butlerian Jihad. So,
but that one, I figured they were avoiding saying jihad.
Jihad, yeah, that's true. So, yeah. But yeah, the high-handed enemy, Gom Jabbar, that's what that word means. So,
yeah. And they don't connect it for people who don't know to what that title means. But yeah.
Right.
I was just like, I was incredulous with Desmond I was like, Desmond, you really thought that Haviko would put you above his own daughter? I just feel like there's a general inconsistency in relationships in this show. Like yeah,
dude, you're a military advisor and leader. You're not my blood. You're not my kin.
Right.
So you're not in line.
Right. And we know Haviko wanted to send Natalia away? Did they ever say where? It's just he's like, I thought you wanted to be more involved. She's like, you tried to send me away. He's like, I thought you wanted to be more involved with the Imperium. So I feel like they cut a scene where he asks her to, and then she says, I didn't even find out from you. So I feel like there's a scene cut somewhere where she finds out he wants to make her an ambassador or something. I don't know.
Well, and it would be a little consistent given that, this idea of keeping your kids safe. I mean, the Richese daughter, I forget her name, and son, when she says, when she's with
Blondie,
what's his name?
With
she
Constantine,
Constantine, thank you. She says, "Oh, he kept us apart, right? I was on this planet, and my brother was on the other planet." And obviously, if Natalia had been captured and ransomed at some point as well, do you remove them out of a line of danger? Which, I don't know. It doesn't not compute, I guess I could say.
So. Yeah. Well, so now Natalia and Desmond are both mad at Havigo and gang up on him together. And Natalia wants to convince everyone that the Sisterhood is behind the planned assassination that they thwarted at the Landsraad meeting. But we have Francesca I can't decide if Francesca was being a wild card here and Valia really didn't predict that she would tell him about the needle, or if Valia somehow planned for this to happen, and if so, to what ends. But basically, Francesca tells Havigo about the needle, and I don't know, why would Valia lie and say Francesca never loved him? And then in this moment, she tells him about the needle, and she says that the imprint won't let Havigo hurt him. So he's like, I have to control something, and stabs himself. I was very confused about why he thought that was the best thing to do at that moment, is kill himself.
Yeah, I guess they didn't do enough for me in that regard of him feeling degraded as a leader and as an individual enough to then do that drastic course of action. Like there wasn't enough erosion of his sense of self to go there for me for it. So it felt a little out of place.
Yeah. Well, and then Natalia takes the needle and kills Francesca with it, and then
revenge.
And Francesca dies immediately because then it was meant to kill, quickly, and Havigo dies slowly, painfully under his wife's scornful eyes, and his wife's like, "Well, guess I can put her hand on the needle and blame the Sisterhood after all, and take out my mistress in one shot." So.
And doesn't she go running off and saying, "Oh, the emperor," right after?
Yeah. But I feel most sad for Havigo. But anyway.
Yeah. Pour one out for Mark Strong and Havigo. He did a great job, really playing this leader who's trying to project strength, but also constantly plagued by this sense of weakness.
Yeah,
that very subtle thing to do, and I thought he did a really good job with that. So question in sort of terms of canon and lore, the metacyanide killed Francesca so quickly, but as a sister, wouldn't she have been able to, and a Reverend Mother, to transmute the poison, or did the poison she wasn't expecting it and it just acted so quickly?
Can Bene Gesserit transmute metacyanide?
I don't know. That's what I'm asking. They can transmute a lot of things, but can they, could they do that? That's a question. You would think that I would think, for me, if I were in the operations directorate, and I deployed my agents with a particular poison, I'd make sure that my agent had the ability to, if that tool was used against them, that they would be okay, right? Like, so.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm overthinking it.
It would make sense but yeah. I guess they can't, or at least not yet. Maybe in 10,000 years.
maybe in 10,000 years, indeed.
All right, so let's move on to the final collection of scenes that basically end this season and definitely set up a season 2. So it's a good thing they told us there's going to be one. We find that, Desmond can send visions we see him do that to Valia. So that's where I interpolated that must be what the viral nightmares are about. And Valia
Big
collapses.
question marks there, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, carry on.
Yeah, Valia collapses with those burns. And, this is where Tula has at some point snuck off from Wallach 9. And there was also weird editing here where they talked about Tula having disappeared before we see her actually take off from the planet. So it's where I'm like, okay, the editing's sloppy. And that's why we feel like it's jetpacking more than it necessarily means to.
And she arrives just in time.
She arrives just in time, of course. Yeah. No, I can accept that. But she, I guess, do you think Tula left to help Desmond? Do you think that was her goal?
Well, I think it's a perfect heart in conflict with itself moment, isn't it? Her sister and her son, right? So, yeah, I think it's all of the above. Okay. Answer D, all of the above.
Okay. Well, yeah, she comes and finds both her sister and her son on the ground, and she runs to her sister first. So Valia can feel good about that, but she won't because she's Valia. But she's coaching Valia through, as you were saying earlier, like, you can't fight the machines like you would fight the Rossack poison, basically. So,
I'm glad you pointed that out, because that was a point of confusion for me after watching the episode. Like, wait, how is this working? But that makes sense now, that it's a machine and not biological. And so your active measures or your defenses would be you need to tailor them differently. So that answers a bunch of questions for me.
Yeah, it's not something you can just absorb into yourself because it's not natural, or I guess it's yeah.
Yeah, you can't transmute it. They're machines. It's not transmutable.
Right. But this is also where Valia, even though her sister runs to her first, now Valia knows that her sister is not her creature completely. And this is where she finds out that she lied about Desmond, keeping him from her because Tula's like, no, you can't kill my son. And she's like, your son. And Valia says Tula handed her son to her enemies by, taking him away from Valia and setting him off. Do you agree?
It took a lot of research by whoever the others are, to identify Desmond, and then how to convince, like, okay. So how did whoever that was, how did they recover him? How do you recover a body from a worm strike like that? Yeah, there's a lot of questions here. I really don't know. I buy the fact that somebody is pissed off at the sisterhood, and they're searching for an angle, some way to go at them, maybe even more than one way to go at them. And at some point they stumbled across this clue that then led them, some clues that led them ultimately to Desmond, but then how to turn Desmond into their tool.
Yeah.
Big questions.
Well, so since Desmond's from Balut, we do know from lore, it hasn't been said in the show, but from lore that's already out there, that the Tleilaxans they scourged Balut and took human slaves there, basically, to experiment on, I suppose. So that it must be how they first came into his sights, but then have they maybe been controlling him forever? Like before he went to, before he joined, before he joined the Emperor's army and went to Arrakis?
That actually would make the most sense as we're talking about it now. That seems logical, right? That they took him when he was a baby, and this whole time he has been whatever creature that they have, assuming that it's the Tleilaxans, that he has been, and then this is just a long con. This is just a long game, and they've been building up, and then at some point they were like, okay, now's the moment that we need to deploy this stratagem, and so then they flipped a switch in his brain and had him get killed by the worm. So, or maybe that's a fake. Maybe that's fake news. That video. And then, I don't know. Like a big question marks there. But anyway, that they used that as a setup, so that then Desmond can walk into the palace and go, "Hey, I'm this like really wild, cool thing," and that they've tailored him to fit into Natalia's vision of you're chosen by Shai Hulud, and all this stuff. So yeah, that kind of makes sense that he's a long con. That they've built him up to be a long con.
Yeah. Yeah, and so we get it seems like okay, so we definitely had Valia experiencing Desmond's visions, but also they were mixing with her own visions because we also see her flashback to that moment where she was young, and we see, she said she commanded Griffin to swim, and it turns out, okay, so this is all completely different from the books, but I'm just to just to point that out. Just to flag it. But she's commanding Griffin to swim, but it's under the ice. So she pulls Griffin out, but that's the moment he died? Am I understanding that correctly?
I think it's a hybrid vision, because obviously the swirling snow particles are what they visually set up for us with what was the soup doctor's name?
With Nazir.
Nazir, thank you. With Nazir. And so and of course that's the very opening shot of the season with that quote about, victory and, in the light and the dark. And we get all those sort of particles swirling around, which I had interpreted as embers, but they also are visually speaking to spice, right? The floating sort of spice particles, which we see in the Villeneuve movies. But then now we have it tied in, those floating particles, to the scourge, the Omnia scourge, or whatever this virus is. So to me, it wasn't more of a literal flashback, but it was more of a her struggle is coming back in a partially formed memory. So we're getting this deeper drama of Valia and her feelings of loss and regret and everything around her brother. So it's just kind of a big visual stew for me.
Yeah. And then we also see her standing, like, on this vision. Obviously it takes place on Lankafile, their ice planet. And then she says, I see the worm coming. She sees him coming and the worm's coming. And it transitions with there's like the swirling snow mixed with these black particles. And then it's transitioning to the sand mixed with the spice. And she's standing on Arrakis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's a lot of setup for future, right?
Right. So. Yeah. And then we get the biggest piece of setup. So those blue eyes we've been seeing in the sky. Indeed, there's a mechanical thing, and they're not actually blue eyes.
4 lights. Sorry, I had to do my Star Trek.
There's 2.
But it's the I'm playing. I'm having a play with it.
I know. I don't get the reference. I haven't watched. This is from the original movie?
Star Trek: The Next Generation. Captain Picard is taken captive, and the torture that he is put under involves convincing him to look at a series of lights and say that there's only 2 lights as opposed to 4 lights as a marker that they've psychologically broken him. So if he can, spoilers for a however long thing, there's a lot to that episode. So it's like, I don't even need to, this isn't like spoiler really.
Yeah.
But basically they're trying, can you convince another person to look at an objectively verifiable fact and then say that something that's different about it as a measure of psychological control over that person, kind of a Manchurian Candidate sort of style torture and control. So.
Well, in real life studies, they find that most people, the only thing you need to do to get people to say something they don't believe is true is to have everyone else in the room say it. And then people will be like, well, look at lines and be like, one is objectively longer, but they'll be like, no, the one that the others said is the longest, That's
really interesting, because isn't social media just a giant echo chamber of that? That's how we can bend things. Anyway, let's not get into the modern political landscape. But that's really interesting. I actually think that's really interesting that you point that out. I didn't realize that. But yeah, we're social creatures, right? And so if you control the social environment as opposed to the individual, that's really interesting. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Well, that's how. That's how dangerous things happen. Yep.
Yeah. Indeed.
Well, but to quote the Spice Girls, when 2 become 1, we have 2 blue eyes that we eventually, it's actually kind of like a blurred vision. It's just one big blue eye in the face of a machine. We'll have a very brief discussion about this after the credits, because it involves spoilers for both the XD books and the end of the original series.
Biting my tongue about all of this. Anyway, machines, yes.
Yes, but so it's a machine that's operating on Desmond's eye, and there's kind of a cool, gnarly effect. You can see the eye pulled out so they can do whatever they're doing to it.
Yeah.
But my question is he a Gola or not? We still don't know.
Yeah, no, I don't think he is, but did they do more augmentation? Is there more beyond just the eye? Because obviously he got stabbed in the gut and he's, 12 tours on Arrakis and all this kind of stuff. Right. It even makes more sense that he's a setup as a long con, because 12 tours of Arrakis, from what Haviko says in episode 1, I believe.
Right. He should have survived. Yeah.
That is a major accomplishment. Nobody, right, goes that long. So it's designed to impress Haviko. And so building up Desmond in that way, that makes sense, at least, from a theory crafting point of that. So yeah, I'm assuming that there's more to Desmond than just the eye, but then they needed to reveal the eye for obvious reasons.
Well, because that's my question is Nazir, when she's like, the eye, or was it Nazir? Anyway, somebody says the eye is the virus. So I'm like, well, just cut out the eye and be done with it? Or maybe Navalia said that, but it's like, okay, then you don't have to kill him. Just take out that eye, give him a new one.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. So anyway, it's one light instead of two.
Right.
So.
Oh, and I was wrong. Theodosia's not alone in the jail because Desmond commands his mother be arrested. So he sees his mother save him, and maybe that's why he doesn't kill her on the spot. But he's like, arrest her.
Don't add us.
Yeah,
it's clearly we got that there.
Yeah.
So which is a good plot device for future, right? If Desmond and Tula and Theodosia are all three together, there's some potential dramatic tension there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then that's where we get this little quick insert with Harrow, and that there's like this substance all over the walls. It almost looks like it might be bugs crawling or something, but then it pulls together these particles. So it must be the nanoparticles, and it creates that ball that we saw Desmond give Harrow in the last episode. And yes, it seems that it is indeed a video recording device, and he's been recording everything, all of Valya's machinations.
Dun dun dun. He's got tools now over his aunt. And they kept showing us that relief, that graphic or that poster, whatever that design in it. I get that it's supposed to be Lankivel and like a whale carcass on the shore. That's the way I'm interpreting it, but it's a weirdly abstract in some ways.
I thought it might be a fossil or something. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it seemed to me more like one of those relief murals, like, sort of a 3D carved piece of art. And then there's a little blob in the middle there. And I was kind of taking that as a whale carcass on the surface. Like, hey, this is our roots, right? We're from, this is who we are, and this is how we've built ourselves up to this point. That's the way I was going with it. But anyway, yeah. Weird thinking machine technology. Like I thought at first I was going with the idea that it was these one of these AI consciousnesses that you were talking about, which would have been very Westworldly as well, right? Because they use marbles for the CPU, as it were. Well,
but it is what they do in the books, in the prequels,
right? Which you mentioned in the last podcast. So
yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess just because it is a video recording device doesn't mean there's not more to it. It is. There's obviously some sort of artificial intelligence, I guess. I don't know. We don't really know. We don't know.
Cool effect, though. It was cool to watch the thing coalesce back together, and it was cool to see the way that the playback happened. I thought that was all really, again, visual design is on point. So
right. But Valya's not there for him to do anything to her at the present, because she, Inez, and Kieran, which is, I love the fact that Valya and Kieran are together. I'm signed up for season 2 just to watch how Valya deals with having to team up with an Atreides.
Right.
But they're on Arrakis, and she says, Inez, she's just ignoring Kieran at this point. She's like pretending he's not there. She's like, Inez, the path to our enemy begins here. Who do you think she means is their enemy?
Well, whoever built Desmond, I think, is the central tension here, right? Because the Imperium is not the enemy. The Imperium is
what they seek to control, which they have
the
control.
MacGuffin at this point, right? Yeah, it's a kind of a meta MacGuffin, if you will.
Yeah.
So yeah, whoever is behind that, and many Thylax are certainly prime suspects, I would guess. The Ixians are not to be forgotten about, but I really think the Thylax are who they're the clues that the breadcrumbs that they've laid out so far, at least, are pointing me in that direction.
Yeah, I have another idea I'm going to talk about after in the spoiler section after the credits.
Right on. Okay.
But yeah, Inez, I guess she's technically inherited the throne now, but she doesn't even know her father's dead.
That's a good point.
And we don't know. Yeah.
Natalia's going to sit the throne, I guess.
Yeah, but we don't even know where Constantine is. We saw no Constantine and no Michaela this episode.
Well, Constantine was going to be dispatched with the fleet to take control of Arrakis, or to bring order to Arrakis.
Right. So is he there? They're going to meet up with him on Arrakis, and I wonder how because he had kind of turned on his sister last we saw him.
Because, hey, I finally got my daddy's love. So
and now daddy's dead. So
yes, exactly. Avenge me, my son.
What is this going to mean? How's he going to take that? Huge plot, huge room for plot development. Right. And I just hope that as we said, I just hope let's give the characters room to breathe and for us to connect with the characters so that we actually see these plot machinations play out and really feel something for them. Right. Yeah. I mean, if they are now able to more plan in advance, and presumably they won't be filming during a writer's strike and all that, then I hope they are just able to just tell exactly as much of the story as you can fit with finishing it off and, not leaving us with all this headcanon that we have to create. Then that would be a sign of a successful season 2.
What was it? The Ringer, or not on the Ringer Network, the Watch podcast. They were talking with showrunners from Shogun, and they were talking about how important it is to have writers on set during production, because there are constant choices being made. Right. Yeah, you can break the episode, you can write the scripts for it, but once you actually get into the practicality of shooting with actors and sets and weather and CG, all this kind of stuff, you need to make literally last minute changes, handing actors scripts as they're standing in front of the camera. And if you don't have the writers there who are intimately connected to the source material, you're just adding impurities into your impurities. I'm trying to, you're degrading ultimately what's going on, because you need people who are understanding the whole of the storyline. Right.
And I mean, it's not just that. It's just you need people who can write.
That too. Very important aspect. And you need to train those writers, right? That was part of the story of the strike, was we need people not to just sit in a room for a couple of weeks to break a season, but they need to be on set to understand how this all works together. So I really think that's just more apparent to me now than ever, and how important writers are. I understood how important writers are, but it's really, I'm getting it on another level now after watching a lot of these shows struggle with these same issues.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's another podcast. Different topic. So, all right. Well, it seems like we're here at the end. So thanks again for putting together the notes on this episode. I appreciate you taking the time, and it's been a pretty good run for a season of television, and we're going to have some more movies and other things to talk about. And we made some new friends in the internet world with this as well. And I look forward to talking to the Dune Minute guys. What do we have going on in terms of what's next? So we've got sometime after the new year, I think, is what you and I were talking about. You and I will get back together. We'll collect all of your feedback. So send in your feedback to dune@thelorehounds.com. Our good friend Nancy, friend, that sounds so minuscule to compare to what she is.
Our hand of the pod. Yeah.
Hand of the pod, Nancy, will be there to organize the feedback for us. She's also, I'm sure, going to pull up a bunch of the stuff from the Discord, because there's been a lot of great conversation there. And then you and I will break the episode a little bit more through using feedback as conversation points and anything else that comes up for us. And then at some point, a week or two after that, we'll get together with Dune Minute Podcast and we'll do a big lore, like, let's take a big breath and sort of dive in.
Once we've had time to process.
Exactly. We, on our main feed, John and you have been having a little bit of fun with the Christmas season, and Maya and I were able to jump in with our good friend Anna Claus as well. And we did our little secret in Hot Frosty. That was an experience.
Hot Frosty's awesome. Watch it. It's so awesomely bad.
It is really, it is camp. It is total camp.
Yeah.
So, with a wink and a nod.
It knows it's camp. Yeah.
Yeah. What else you and John got up to? Some other,
we did the
nonsense.
Christmas Prince trilogy and the Princess Switch trilogy, plus The Night Before Christmas. So those episodes, there's 2 episodes there that are extras that are available for subscribers on Supercast and Patreon.
Nice. We were at a family, friends of family, extended family friends gathering last night, holiday party. And the question came up of, is a movie what makes a Christmas movie because it's set during Christmas or because it deals with Christmas themes? So we had a fun time talking about those things. So you guys definitely covered the Christmas topics this year.
Actually, yeah, Luke and I are doing On Will Shift Us, the Christmas Carol miniseries, and in our Twists episode, we were having the similar sort of a discussion because we were discussing whether a film is a Christmas movie or not, and what makes that. So
exactly. What else do we have? We have speaking of Christmas, on Christmas Day tomorrow, as relative to when we're recording this, we are going to have our year-end top 10 podcast. So normally this was would be normally a subscriber benefit show, but we always make our top 10 list available to everyone. And you, me, and John go over our top 10 list for the year, which was a lot of fun to record. And John, we recorded it earlier this month when John was a little sick. And so his voice, he sounds very much like James Earl Jones. So so when you hear it, just know that he's fine. Everything's fine. We're all good. I had another podcast out with Star Trek Motion Picture with Ian.
Wait, and there's going to be a second top 10, right? With the with the interviews with various contributors. Oh,
that's right. Yeah. On Boxing Day, as it were, the day after, we have John and I kind of split up who we talked to, and we talked to all of our affiliates and our co-hosts and got everybody's top 3 movies for that. And so that'll be packaged up on your podcast feed on the day after Christmas on the 26th. And what else do we got? Skeleton Crew?
Right. Oh, yeah. Sorry, I interrupted you talking about Star Trek, but yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah. The motion picture podcast. That was a lot of fun with Ian from the Captain's Pod. And we've got some plans in the future, but we'll wait. We'll save those for next year. John and Maryland got a Skeleton Crew episodes 1 through 4. Was it?
Yeah. Mid-season. Yeah.
Yeah. And then they'll do another one when they follow up. And I think you're very pleased with what Skeleton Crew is doing and where they're going, lore and story-wise.
Oh, I'm so excited. A new episode comes out tonight. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. Fun. Yeah, it's a lovely show. It really is done a good job.
Yeah.
What else do you got here?
I'm getting out 3 overdue episodes next week as soon as I've wrapped up this other book project I'm working on, and which I only have 1 part left. Oh my God, it's going to be such a big deal. But anyway, and the Christmas coverage, which I've been editing the hell out of. So next week, there's going to be 3 catch-up. 1 is finally the Agatha Coven quiz.
Okay.
We did coverage with Nicole, Marilyn, and I about Wicked, the new movie musical.
Fun. And I think you got some voicemails from some of the other Lorehound co-hosts
from Ron, at least.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Great.
And then also Jean and I we finally did now Joker 2, Joker Folie à Deux is now available for streaming. So we've done our critique of it, but also like, what do we think? Is it, spoiler alert, we neither think it's as good or as bad as anyone else is saying.
Okay.
But we paired it with our first Versus episode. So it's Joker from DC Comics versus Madcap, which is a Marvel villain.
Okay. Very cool. And then I think we've been kicking around the idea of Conclave, and there was something else that we were kicking around for the New Year's. Oh, War of the Rohirrim as well. Mm-hmm. So those are all in conversations, but we're going to just wait until everybody's back and settled from the holidays to cover those.
Well, at the very least, we're going to be covering Conclave with the award season, because it's going to be a big player. Right.
It seems like there's a lot of late breaking award season movies out there. So. What else you got? We'll Shift Dust?
Yeah, We'll Shift Dust. So we did a Christmas Carol mini-series. So there are 4 episodes, including a mini intro episode on the public feed and an extra one for We'll Shift Dust subscribers, which is a different subscriber model. And of course, we have ongoing Silo Season 2 coverage, which is continuing through January 17th. Do check out also my Star Wars Canon Timeline podcast. And then, the rest of the network. Which, by the way, check the link tree in the show notes for links to the Supercast and Patreon and all these affiliates and email and
And never mind the music, Party in the USA by Miley Cyrus and the Pentatonic Life. That sounds like a really interesting topic. I gotta listen to that.
Pentatonic Life transitions,
Interesting. Properly Howard is going strong with a few good films, and they just there was a podcast that popped up in my feed the other day. There's so much podcast content. You've got plenty to occupy yourself this holiday season. Radioactive Ramblings has been covering Arcane, the Red Rising books, and Studio Ghibli movie Howl's Moving Castle. Is that right?
So far, yeah, they're doing a whole series.
Okay, great. And then Severance is going to be our big show starting January 17th. And John and I are going to be pairing up with Anthony and Steve from Properly Howard to be covering that week by week. And we're looking forward to it. John is very excited for Severance. Severance. What am I saying? Silence.
He just told me there's a short story tie-in that was released. Now I have to read it.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
But people should catch up with Steve and Anthony season 1 coverage on that separate Severance feed before January 17th as well.
Exactly.
And then I hand the baton of Apple sci-fi content from Silo over to you at Severance.
Hopefully you can take a little bit of a breather.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I'm going to be prepping for the awards content and all this Marvel and stuff that John and I have planned. But
Comics Versus looks like it's going to be a good year for you guys. It's going to be busy.
Yeah, it's going to be busy.
Yeah. All right. Well, do you want to read us out? I've got some nice lo-fi music set up for you.
Cool. All right. Welcome to our Discord server boosters, Aaron K.
Elysia by Midnight.
Tiller the Thriller, Dork of the Ninjas, Duve71, Athena Ajalea, Tina the Stew, Nancy M, Ghost of Perdition, and Radioactive Richard. And thank you most especially to our lore masters, our highest tier of subscribers who get called out every week: Samartian, Michael G, Michelle E, Brian P, SC, Peter OH, Bettina W, Adam S, Nancy M, Duve71, Brian 8063, Frederick H, Sarah L, Gareth C, Eric F, Matthew M, Sarah M, DJ Miwa, Andrew B, Kwang Yu, Jedi Jedi Bob, Nathan T, Alex V, Aaron T, Sub-Zero, Aaron K, Dally V, Mothership 61, Gnarls, Kathy W, Listu, Jeffrey B, Elysia U, Neil F, Ben B, Scott F, Stephen N, and Adrian, of course, always last.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Elysia, for all your hard work on this. Thank you, Nancy, for everything. Wishing everyone a happy holidays and a good start to your new year. Lorehounds have plenty of coverage going for you for next year, so we're going to be busy, and we're just glad that you're all here. So wishing you a wonderful holiday season. Elysia, thank you for everything again.
Yeah, and everyone stick around for one more spoiler take.
That's right.
The Lorehounds podcast is produced and published by The Lorehounds. You can send questions and feedback and voicemails at thelorehounds.com/contact. Get early and ad-free access to all Lorehounds podcasts at patreon.com/thelorehounds. Any opinions stated are ours personally and do not reflect the opinion of or belong to any employers or other entities. Thanks for listening.
Okay, Elysia, what do you got
So
on the blue eyes?
yeah, so I think we're getting an ominous. Sorry,
Omnius?
omnious. Yeah,
An ominous omnius?
Yeah, exactly. So again, just as a reminder, Omnius was sort of like the hive mind that was leading the AI side of the Great Machine Wars, and one of his, I don't know, I won't call him a general. I don't mean to actually give him a title, but someone who worked on his side, but then defected and then was with the Mentats and then had a connection with all these key characters in the prequel trilogies, named Erasmus. He was also a machine whose brain core was saved, but then seemed to have been killed later. But then these characters pop up again 10,000 years later to cause trouble in the later original Dune books. So this should be a time when they're laying low, or at least I don't know. This is kind of, they're playing with this in-between point in the timeline. But that seems to be what we saw in terms of like the machine. Because remember the machine, we saw them fighting in the first scene of the series?
Oh, yeah. Exactly. That big sort of, not spider creature, but sort of four-legged thing. Yeah.
And this seems to be the same sort of technology, basically.
Yeah. I haven't got a chance to listen or read or check on any of the other reactions to the episode, but I wonder how hard done do people feel about this not being Paul or Leto 2 or the Golden Path. I mean, you can't give us two blue eyes without, toying with our emotions, so to speak.
I didn't hear anyone who wanted it to be Paul in the first place, so I didn't hear any disappointment on that front. I think people who were guessing Leto 2 are also, they're pulling from the same, not that I've gotten a chance to listen to other podcasts really yet, except for the official one. But I think that if you're looking for Leto 2, you're happy to have other references to these later books, would be my interpretation. I'm fine with it.
Okay. All right. Because,
it makes more sense, probably, to be honest.
Was that an intent? Were they intentionally toying with us, or I don't know. It's interesting. Again, they are making some very specific choices about what they're doing with the lore and the story. So we just kind of have to accept it.
Because Leto 2 can't influence backwards. So it almost seemed like at certain points they were trying to make us nervous about the lore and then being like, just kidding, it's not magic and, we can't time travel.
Exactly. I think that's a good point. And the Golden Path doesn't go backwards, it's forward. So how could have Leto 2, the second, influenced the reckoning and stuff like that? So that's I think that's an interesting point. So interesting. Yeah. Omnius. I mean, I think Omnius is a good bet on what this is, or it could be the Tlilax, right? So, because they've got motive as well. And we don't have, like you said, I think.
But they could be strange bedfellows working together,
Exactly. And I think you pointed this out early on, was they chose a opportune moment in the written lore and all of the XD and OG books where there's nothing here, so that they can wrap story the way that they want to. They can they just know a starting point and an ending point. Right. That they can fit stuff in quite easily.
And the ending point is 10,000 years away, so there's a lot of room.
Exactly. Plenty of room to maneuver. So all right. Well, I don't have anything else really.
No, that was it. That's just So, I mean, I guess there was some fun teases for season 2. I just need them to pull it all together a bit more. Yes. And I feel like, I do want to give the writers and stuff the grace that there were these outside influences that affected the final product.
Yeah, indeed. All right. Well, Elysia, happy holidays. Happy New Year. This is my last podcast of the season, of the year. Yay! So I don't know about you. Are you all done?
One more spoiler cast with Abby on Friday. Yeah.
Good. Well, I hope you enjoy your holidays and your time with your family.
All right. Thank you. You too.
Okay. Bye.
All right. Bye.